Folks, here we are. We started this season back in June of last year, and season 3 has reached its end. And I figured, we've had Mark, we've had Flash. Why not get the last person off the puzzle? Your current reigning Rev Pro Undisputed Women's Champion and a part of TNA Wrestling and Subculture, Dani Luna. Welcome.
Hi, Ben. Thank you for having me. I'm glad that you kept the leader of Subculture until the end. That was very good politicking on your part. Thank you.
Well, I'm anything is, smartly dressed, and I try to adhere to the rules as I do. But, Dani, as I've done with every guest before, and I will do for the future, every guest has a story, and every story has a beginning. Dani, how did your story begin as a wrestling fan?
Mine's quite weird, actually. So I got into wrestling, I think, quite late, at least for a child. I was about 14. And my brother was super into it my whole life. He's about 10 years older than me. And I was off sick from school one day, and I was sleeping in the living room like you do because it's cooler down there. And I was sleeping. He came in and he was like, "Oh, there's like a wrestling pay-per-view on. Do you mind if I watched it?" And I was like, "Yeah, go ahead. Don't care." So I'm sleeping while he's watching it, and then I wake up. Oh no, it's 2013. Right, is the year, and I'm sleeping, and I wake up, and the first wrestler I remember ever seeing is Mark Henry. And I remember seeing Mark Henry and being like, who is that? And then I just kind of never stopped watching it from there. He got me in. And then, yeah, from there, I literally Googled wrestling training school almost immediately after I started watching it. And then I actually used my brain and prepared for a few years. And then when I was about 16, I started training at a school in Gloucester where I lived at the time. And then from there, actually did some research and found a better school in Cardiff, where I am now and where I've stayed ever since. And yeah, the rest is kind of history, I guess. It's all happened very quickly. I have to stop and remind myself a lot that I haven't actually been doing it that long, and I have to, be grateful and be present a lot.
Well, Dani, going 100 miles per hour is no bad thing indeed, because you've made a hell of a journey along that road. But I want to talk about Mark further. You mentioned Mark Henry being the first kind of wrestler you ever saw. And Mark in himself, that's a sight to see. He is an absolute beast
Right?
as well. I know as well he would have that Hall of Pain run when he was with the World Heavyweight Championship. A lot of people enjoyed it, and some people feel like it could have gone more. So I want to know, Dan, if you put on your little fantasy book and hat, where would you love to have seen Mark Henry go with the Hall of Pain gimmick?
Oh, that's tough. I think it definitely could have gone further, but I don't think. I think Mark Henry is. We all know his best ever moment was the fake retirement in the salmon suit, and I just don't know if there's any topping that, which is such a shame because it was literally just a segment on Raw. But for me, I think that's actually one of the best things. I think it was the first time it was done in wrestling, right? Like a proper fake retirement that we all believed. I just thought it was incredible. I think he could have done a lot more in general. If you look at the grand scheme of his career, there's probably more to have been done. I don't think he was really ever at the top for that long. Like I said, I think he's sick. If he could bring in someone like me as just a kid who's seen him on TV, because he is such a presence, I think he could have done that for a lot more people. I like to think I'm the only person that has that story there.
Well, hey, wrestling's like a pick and mix. Everyone's got a different introduction to it, and there's always the best parts of the pick and mix, even the little, taffy coffees that are kept at the little bottom that you keep away to the shelf because they're absolutely rancid and horrid. But also as well, Dani, I've always been fascinated about the UK scene as well, how it's evolved and grown. And I know back in the day, maybe even pre-2010, that there was really no British scene training to begin with, and it's developed so long. So I want to know your first introduction to it with training schools and everything. Was it quite easy, or was there a lot of things spread out and you had to travel far to it?
I got really lucky. So the first school I found, like I said, I literally just Googled it. And there was actually a wrestling school about 10 minutes from my house. So I got really lucky in that sense. And I don't think it was really a place I could have stayed forever and, made a career in. But as an introduction, it had everything I needed. It had a ring, it had someone that knew how to roll and how to take bumps. And that's kind of all I needed at that point. So I was there for about a year, and then after kind of feeling like I'd learned all I could learn, that's when you kind of have to be like, okay, what's worth traveling to, and how far do I need to go to like learn the next steps of this and other aspects of pro wrestling that you don't really think about other than just the physicality, right? So that's kind of how I ended up at Dragon Pro at the time, New Wave Wrestling now. Because I'd met a couple of the boys on the shows. I think I'd met like Wild Boar at a show once, and I just knew he had a training school, and I was like, well, he's good, so surely I should go there. And Gloucester to Cardiff was only about an hour on the train, so it was kind of doable for me at the time. And once I kind of went that way, that's kind of where I stayed, and I was like, I think this is the place I need to be to grow. And I ended up being like the only girl to really come out of there for a long time, which I was so grateful for, because everyone was kind of egging me on and trying to get me to do well, so I could be this kind of face of the Welsh wrestling scene, at least for women, and try and get other women involved, which is really hard, I think, even to this day. I think we are trying really hard to get more girls into it, but it is quite a test, and I think it's important. I think I hold a lot of responsibility for making sure that the women that do come into wrestling go somewhere good, where they get trained well and treated respectfully. And it's a hard balance to get, but I knew pretty early on that I'd found a good place at Dragon Pro, so I just kind of stuck there. And then I moved here about a year later, and I was like, yeah, this is where I need to be.
No, fair dues indeed. And obviously, there's a lot of great British women wrestlers out there right now, from Session Martina to Riho, Nightshade. Up here in Scotland as well, you've got Molly Spartan and Daisy Jenkins and many other from Pro Wrestling Ready as well. I want to know, with the UK scene in general, do you feel like there's maybe this underlying of amazing women wrestlers that are just nearly about to break through into maybe bigger scenes?
I think so. It's hard though, because I think women's wrestling has done so well for itself in the past, even like 2-3 years, that so many names that have been around for ages are only just reaching that kind of like main event level and that kind of big progress level, for example. And that's only really just because they haven't really been given that opportunity before. And I do think we've all made an effort to get a lot better over the years so that we don't stick out in those scenarios. So it's hard to say, because I think, if I told you that Lizzie Evo is the next breakout star, you'd go, oh, well, that's silly, but she's already really big. But she's been around forever. And I think we need to take into account that these people can have been here for ages, but not had that opportunity to shine yet. And I think she's a great example of that. I think even like Daisy Jenkins, like you said, a great example of that. I've wrestled her a few times. Emerson Jane, I think, is a huge one. She's so incredibly talented, and she's someone that just needs to know how good she is and just take it as far as she can,
No, absolutely.
But these are all women that I think, except Daisy Jenkins, I think they've all been wrestling longer than me. So it's hard to say what makes you break out and what makes you a newbie. I'm pretty sure you can be like the breakout star of the year and be 10 years in, but it's all about when you get that opportunity to do it.
No, hey, that's very fair indeed. And I feel like what's kind of hard as well with Volley just being the old island of the UK, bigger companies being states-based, they don't have like that big exposure and all that. But we have many other great scenes as well. But I also want to know as well, Dani, traveling about for the UK scene as well, do you think that maybe makes you a bit more appreciative of being a British wrestler, knowing you have to go for bookings and maybe travel 6 or 5 hours in cars to other places to wrestle?
Yeah, I do think it does make you appreciate it. Although having now gone to America, it makes me so grateful for how small the UK is in comparison. Like, my God, the most I could possibly drive would probably be to Scotland, and that would be 9 hours maybe. But that you can't get across a state in America in 9 hours. I'd like the time it must take some of them to go, and some of them do. They drive it, and I think that's crazy. So it's made me a lot more humble about a 4-hour car journey. But I think it's great. I think if anything, I think it's really great for the people you're sharing that car with. I think all of my friends in wrestling have been made on car journeys as opposed to at shows or online or at training, because you're forced within this group, and I think you get to know people at the most real level when you're all tired and you're all beat up, and I think it's a great way to find out who people really are outside of wrestling, because you run out of wrestling to talk about eventually, so you have to just talk about your real life and who you are. I think that's where you make some of your best friends.
Sure, indeed. And obviously those car journeys I've heard from many others are quite fun and unique, and crazy things can happen. I want to know, Dan, what's your favorite car journey going up and down the UK for wrestling?
Do you want favorite or do you want weirdest?
You know what? Hit me with both. I like the
Okay.
crazy journey.
I think the Rev Pro car journey got really good. There was a period of time where it was me, Brendan, and Danny Jones. Just almost every week, it felt like back and forth to Rev Pro, because obviously either it's in London or it's in Southampton, so it's always a bit far away. And we just kind of got into this routine where we spend so much time together, and we all just kind of become one mangled brain. And you start talking your own language, and you're barely saying words anymore. And Brendan White can't speak very well at the best of times, so if we can understand him, we know we've all kind of dumbed down a little bit. But those are really fun. I think any of the ones up to Modern Nomad in Manchester are always a good time as well. But yeah, it's always nice. I see these people all the time, but I think depending on the location, it feels like a special time together, you know. But my weirdest one was very early on in my career. Me and a wrestler called Nadia Sapphire were driving to Preston, and on the way home we went to like a chip shop near the venue, and some guy just came in and locked the door behind him and was holding the poor chip shop lady at like knife point, trying to steal all the money from the chip shop. And we were just in there like waiting for our chips, like guys, can we leave? So then we were just held hostage in this chip shop in Preston. Not for very long. He gave up after like 10 minutes and just left. But it could have been bad. And it was one of those moments where you were like, oh, I'm going to be the one that has to fight. And I really didn't want to fight in the chip shop in Preston. So I'm glad I didn't have to.
Well, two things I note out of that, and I'm going to note them down. Don't visit chip shops in Preston.
Probably don't visit Preston.
Yeah, that, you know what, just pour that out, you know, good Preston in general. But I mean, I can imagine you would have just, you know, maybe gorilla pressed a guy through the window or something like that.
I've had to try.
We do try. We don't know what happened as well. But also as well, Danny, as well, I know within wrestling, one important thing that I've always come across is ring psychology, knowing, you know, how to interact with the crowd and how ring work is. I want to know from yourself, learning about ring psychology, do you think it was quite easy, or were there certain aspects of it you really needed to maybe have a wee little study lesson on and learn about?
I think it's really hard. I don't know if it's something that you ever fully understand, because I think it changes as kind of fans' perception of wrestling changes too, right? I guess when you first start watching wrestling, you know, you think everything's 100%, and it's such an easier story to tell if someone believes that. But then as fans get smarter and as fans get older, they appreciate a different sort of wrestling, and they appreciate being treated in a different way. You know, like an older wrestling fan might get a bit offended if you treat them like wrestling's really real and it's all booyah and it's all, you know. And I think it's hard to know your crowd going into it. For example, like a Rev Pro crowd are a lot more adult. They're a lot more appreciative of the athleticism and the competition of pro wrestling. Whereas the next day you might do a family show where it's all kids and all they want to see are the Rock's moves, you know? So it's hard to be prepared for both those things, but I think it's really fun to kind of play with it, and in the same vein, try and get these older, maybe more stubborn wrestling fans to feel like those kids again, you know, to get caught up in it and get carried away in the story you're trying to tell. And I think if you can do that to those sort of fans that kind of think they've seen it all, I think that's when you have really got it right. But I do think that's a very hard thing to do. And I'm not necessarily saying I can do it, but that's the goal.
A very good goal to have as well. But also, you mentioned like the family events, you know, wrestling sometimes is at theme parks or, you know, can be like community centers and everything like that. And I think they're very special as well, not only to help build independencies, but build a sense of community. having people come around for fan shows, and all the family are there. Do you think maybe those opportunities are also a great learning point as well, learning with working with kids crowds and all that? Maybe some wrestlers think they're too snoopy and thinking, oh, that's beneath me, but they're actually very good learning opportunities.
Yeah, 100%. I think so. I think they're the best like base level to start wrestling at, because in a weird, I don't know, I was going to say they're the most forgiving, but that's not necessarily true, because kids don't know how to be polite, so they will just call you out if you do something wrong. But maybe they're the easiest to tell stories to, because they're still in that kind of phase of their life. So I do think it's a really good place to start. I couldn't imagine these people that, like the Rev Pro trainees and their first, I think Maya Matthews, I wrestled her recently, and her first ever match was for Rev Pro. And I could never imagine the pressure of that, and I don't even necessarily know if it's good for you, because it's such a big platform. And I think most people's first match is bad. So I'm sure hers wasn't. I'm sure it was great. But like, I think in my first match, if I'd have known that it was going on the on-demand and all around the world, there's a lot more pressure. And maybe I think a lot of people improve doing these sort of shows where it doesn't really matter if you mess up. Like, it doesn't matter if you try new things and they don't work out. Or you're still figuring out your character. Like, it's all a great platform to try these things where there's not too much collateral damage from it, but you can still, if it sticks really well, and then you can try that on a bigger platform and you can build that. And I have done like the most of my kind of just throwing shit at a wall on those sort of shows, because you just see if it works, and if it doesn't, you can just have a laugh about it and it's fine. And no one's gonna tweet it, so it's okay.
Yeah, you're not going to get someone on X at 2 a.m. saying, this ruined my entire day, nothing will ever sort this now. It's like, yeah, calm down, stick the phone in, stick in the basement, you'll be absolutely chilled in there. But obviously as well, Danny, obviously mentioned ring psychology is also how you present yourself and your gear and everything. But I know yourself, one very distinct characteristic is the hair. Like you've had blue, you've had green, or what's the story about? Is that just like something you love to do, or is there like a mood thing to this? Is it like a mood ring, it's mood hair or something?
I hope green's my happy hair. So it was initially, the blue hair was an accident. I was blonde for a while, and then one of my friends back home, I think she'd just gone through a breakup or something, and it was classic, like, okay, we need to do a girl thing to make you feel better. So I was like, oh, I'll dye your hair, like, it'll be fun, don't worry. And she was very much like, well, I'm not doing it on my own, you have to dye yours. So we bought like this, I think it was blue, but it was meant to be like a blue tinge that you just put on for like 10 minutes, wash it out. And because I was really blonde, it would have just taken really nice. And then we put it on, and I just had immediately the most blue hair you've ever seen in your life. But I quite liked it. And I was like, oh, maybe this is just how I express myself. Like, I immediately looked very different. And it made me stand out in wrestling. It made me stand out in the real world as well. And I was like, oh, maybe there's something that can be done here. And then from there, I just kind of messed around with a bunch of other stuff. I've kind of settled on green for now, mainly just because there's so much of it in my head that it'd probably be really hard to get rid of. But yeah, it's fun. I did purple for a bit, but that faded like nobody's business, so I got rid of that. But it's nice. It does restrict you color-wise what you can wear, because not everything goes with green, and some things clash. But I think right now I'm doing okay. Once I run out of colors, I might change it up.
Yeah, don't worry. I'm sure we can get, like a paint chart and everything. We'll just go through every single color. Like, there's magenta, sunrise, fish bash. Yeah, that'll do.
Yeah,
go with that one. That's another color to cross off the list. But obviously, obviously we're going to talk about NXT UK, but I want to talk a wee bit before that, because I know you won some championships before then. You won like the Mania and the Chaos Championship and a few others. I want to talk about those championship wins and how integral they were for building yourself up in the UK independent scene.
Yeah, they were so integral. I think so. I had the Made in the Chaos, and I think I was the Dragon Pro Women's Champion at the same time for a bit. And they were the first two companies, I think, to really take a chance on me. I was still very new. I think I'd had maybe like 20 matches by the time I won those belts. So I was still very much figuring it out myself. but I had such a great support system, you know, in Dragon Pro, and then Pro Wrestling Chaos is very similarly built, and like a lot of crossover talent. So it felt like a real close group, and they felt like the first people to kind of put me on the map, especially with Dragon Pro. They were very pushy and having me like talk more and do promos and stuff like that, which not a lot of girls were really doing. So as soon as I would like have a match, Hitch would be immediately in my face with a camera and be like, just say something, post it. And then that immediately became something that people liked me for. And I think that's what got me on Pro Wrestling Chaos. And then from there, it just kind of went. And then they're like, well, champion should be able to talk. So then I was a champion. And it just kind of, they always felt like two belts that were very similar. And obviously I held them at the same time. So it's a very integral part of my career when I was holding both those belts. I think I had the Pro Wrestling Soul women's belt at the same time for a bit, which was great because that was, you know, in London, a complete other end of the country. But that was great too for them to take a chance on me as well. Like I said, I was still so new in the grand scheme of things. But I really felt like that gave me a chance to kind of force me into these scenarios where I have to kind of believe my own bullshit a little bit, and I have to be the Dani Luna that I say I am. And it only made me better, and it only made me more confident. And then going into things like NXT UK, I'd go, okay, well, I've done all this, even if I'm really new. I have done these things, and they can't take that away. So they can't say I'm bad at these things, you know? So I went in with skills that I necessarily wouldn't have had if I had not had those opportunities.
Yeah, very good skills to have as well. And obviously, we think obviously before NXT UK, I know obviously the whole world will have the shutdown with the, you know, the big cough 2020. And I want to know, with that environment, you know, was there any kind of skills that came out of that? You know, I know people worked empty shows with no crowds, and we're also just looking about meal plans or ways to train without gyms. Was there anything you maybe gained from that environment of the pandemic?
Yeah, it was so strange. So I got signed to WWE about a month before COVID. So I did one show when we were doing arenas. And then we obviously were off work for like 6 months, and then we started doing the no crowd shows. So it was strange because in WWE, they had us do like, we do as much as we could to still kind of be involved. So they'd have us try and like figure out promos we could do at home that they could use on the show. And we watch back matches over Zoom and stuff. Like, we tried our best to still remain some sort of kind of workplace as well as we could. But yeah, workout wise, it was crazy. Luckily, I lived with 4 other wrestlers at the time. So we, Billy Hayes literally just built like a bench and a squat rack out of timber that we were able to get once B&Q opened. We ran to B&Q and just bought loads of timber, and he made like, he's very good at that sort of stuff. I'd have had no chance, but he built like an actual bench that you could change the incline on. So then it was like Facebook Marketplace, and whoever had given up and was getting rid of their dumbbells, and we go and get them straight away. And it was a proper like smorgasbord of any sort of random gym equipment we could find. And like our living room could barely fit the width of a barbell, so you had to always work out at like a diagonal, and it was a nightmare. But like, I think it made us all very close, and forcing yourself to kind of still feel like an athlete when you have so little equipment and so little of like a motivated environment. You know, it's such a horrible time. There's nothing to do. There's nothing on. Like, it's hard to kind of get yourself going. But I think being surrounded by wrestlers at that time was really helpful, because we could all just kind of like, we all had each other to talk to, even if we were stuck. We were never on our own. Like me and Nico Angelo lived together, and we got really close because we'd always just talk to each other. You know, it was such a strange thing, and no matter what level we were both at, there was always just, okay, at least we can just sit together and have a laugh, and it'll all be all right eventually, you know. And then it is, and it's nice. But yeah, it was a strange time.
Like, good to know that you had that bond of unity with others that just, you know, helped you all bypass that crazy time. But obviously, you know, you mentioned, you know, before just being so young and getting used to things, but then also being signed with the WWE through the NXT UK. Was that a shock to you? Were you just thinking like, oh, I'll give this a try, it might not happen, and then you get the old confirmation email and you think, oh shit.
Yeah, it was a real shock. So I got asked about it because obviously Mark and Hitch and Flash Morgan Webster all worked for WWE at the time. So they told me they'd put me forward. And even that was kind of enough. I was like, that's insane. Like, thanks. I didn't expect it at all. But they told me they put me forward. And then I got an email saying that I was like a backup, so that if anybody else couldn't make it, I'd do the tryout. And that, again, was enough. I was like, that's sick. Move on. Don't worry about it. And then about 20 minutes after I got that first email, I got another email like confirming all the dates and stuff. So I was like, oh, someone must have pulled out pretty fast. And it was about I think it was like a week before it happened. So there wasn't really any time to prepare. So I just went in with exactly what I could do. And luckily, a lot of the tryout was very kind of basic. It was a day of like rolls and bumps, a day of promos, and then a day of matches. So like I cannot thank Hitch enough for that just being the things I was good at, because that's just, he drills the basics in so hard that it didn't, WWE didn't care if I could do cool moves yet, because I was having like a 5-minute tryout match. I wouldn't have had an opportunity to show them that. All they could care was that I looked like a good blank canvas that could safely do all the things they wanted me to do. Mm-hmm. And then I had a good day at the promo class, and they were like, oh, and she can talk as well. And I knew it went well. Like when I did it, I knew I'd done what they'd asked, and I felt like I'd done well. And then like they were pretty quickly saying how they wanted me to stay another week, and then that became, we'll bring you back for these shows. And then I did a couple bits of extra work before they actually offered me a contract, but they were quite open that it was always kind of the plan. It was just a financial businessy thing, why they have to do it at certain times of the year or whatever. But yeah, it was a shock. But once I'd done the tryout, I was very like, oh, well, this is all they're asking of me, and I can do all these things. So there's no need to feel like I'm out of my depth, because I've done it,
Yeah.
So that made me feel a lot better.
Right, great to see. Because then obviously, with NXT UK being showcased on the network, knowing that young you watching Mark Henry, and now you're on technically at the time the same network as him, a dream. When that first episode of NXT UK dropped and you were on it, did you have like a whole watch party and like, oh shit, it's me, I'm on the actual WWE network?
Well, my debut was at Download, which was sick, and I only found out about it like a few days before. So I told like the house at the time that I was going to do it, and then I got to Download and they sent me a photo of them all in the crowd. So they drove all the way down there to watch my debut, and I was like, oh, this is lovely. So it was great because I wrestled, and then we were just at Download Festival. So we just went and watched loads of bands, and it was kind of like the perfect debut day. And because everyone was really drunk and just at a festival, there was no pressure really. So yeah, it was wonderful. By the time it came around on TV, they were always like 6 weeks ahead of TV or something. So by the time it came around, it kind of left. I was already like thinking about the next thing I had to do on TV. So you'd always just get random 100 Twitter notifications, and you'd be like, oh God, what have I done? And you open it and it's just everyone watching your episode. But yeah, it was always strange when it came around, and that Wednesday night when your Twitter would go wild and you'd be like, oh, I guess I was on TV today.
Well, hey, obviously, and I think NXT UK, for what it was very special. I've had people who've been on it, probably yourself, Flash and Mark, Al Bohr, people who've done just one-off appearances, Andy Roberts and Tate Mayfair, but a lot of young talent as well who looked up to NXT UK and the reason why they got into, the business. And I want to know, Danny, from yourself, obviously someone who's been a part of NXT UK, when you look back at that time and that brand, is it special to you? Do you feel like it was maybe something that was not appreciated at the time?
I think the wrestling quality on NXT UK at a time was probably the best in the world. Like, if you think of some of the people we had there, we had Ilya Dragunov, we had Walter wrestling each other in front of nobody and getting like 5 stars for it. And I think those two are such a good example for how much everyone at that brand just loved wrestling. And that's how it felt being there. Because it was, especially any other time I was there anyway, it was all closed doors. So we only really had each other to talk to. And everybody just wanted to do well, and they wanted each other to do well. And I think that reflects so much in some of the matches that were on there. Even going back before I was there, when you had like Pete and Tyler, and their incredible matches that they had, I think that whole lineage of the main belt provided some of the best British wrestling matches I've ever seen, and some of the best matches I think in WWE. So I think it's very special to me. I wish I could have been there while there was more stuff happening, because obviously so much of it was in COVID. And then I got released like the second show where we'd started letting like 15 people into VT Studios. So I never really got into the full swing of it, I don't think. But I am very grateful for the time it had. And obviously it meant I had a job through COVID, which is more than I could ask for. And just the people you get to meet and the friends you get to make and the brains you get to pick just for those 3 years of my life, I'm so grateful for.
Right. It's great to hear. And obviously a very memorable environment and brand that you can still watch on the WWE Network to the day, even though it's buried under so many things. I tried to watch NXT UK loads of times, but so many in the search bar will just bury you. It's like, oh, I'm going to have to dig my way through it. But obviously with WWE, they're a merch machine. They love to produce merch, figures, games, belts, socks, other things that people have. But I want to know, Dani, as well, because they do collectible trading cards, and obviously you did one yourself.
Oh, serious?
Yeah, don't worry. I'm not like a prop guy who's just being like Carrot Top because he's popping stuff out of here. No, I got this out of a pack and I was like, oh, this is really cool. So obviously with these cards, knowing that you're kind of cemented within the history of the WWE on the trading card platform, doing these, was this kind of like I'm actually going to be able to do this and something that people can buy?
Yeah, the trading card thing was really cool. I remember we got sent like a huge box of them because a bunch of them have to be signed. So we got sent this huge box and I just couldn't believe, and they gave you like 10 to keep and just give to like your friends and family, which is really nice. And I think I ended up having like 3 different ones maybe, because you get like different editions, I suppose. But yeah, it's crazy. It was the most I'd ever felt like a famous wrestler at the time, for sure. Especially because we weren't wrestling in front of big crowds. We didn't, between all of us, we all got like maybe 2 matches per taping. So like, it felt proper, like, oh no, this is going somewhere, like this is a worldwide thing. Here I am on a trading card. But it is funny because I think I have about 4 different what they call like where I'm from is billed differently on all of my trading cards. What's that one?
So this one doesn't have where you're billed from.
Oh, that's probably for the best.
So I will read it now, get on my proper tone voice.
Let's go.
Dani Luna's raw power has helped make her one of the most formidable superstars in all of NXT, and it's clear that her power is the source of her rightful confidence. There is a special feeling about walking into a room and knowing you're the strongest person that has a certain power, she said. That is a quote for the ages.
Did I? Apparently I said that. Yeah,
apparently so by the card.
Where like, so I'm billed from London or Cardiff, and I usually let people pick depending on where I am in the country at the time. But then I lived in Gloucester as a child, and somehow WWE found that out and put that on my trading card, that I was from Gloucester, and I was like, that's not cool in the slightest. Like, there's nothing in Gloucester but like farms. Like, that's not Dani Luna at all. Please don't say I'm from there. So if you get a Dani Luna from Gloucester trading card, I would like a photo of it, please.
Well, Dani, I think all that means is, in Gloucester they'll have the farms, the pub, the little pond, and then just a statue of you, like, yeah, pride and joy of Gloucester.
Absolutely, I represent.
Yeah, I would take it indeed. That'd be an absolute stellar thing to see. But obviously within NXT UK as well, formed a little group, Subculture. Now, I've had Mark and Flash's interpretation of events, and they saying that it was a time where they took upon themselves and they kind of plucked you out and were like, yep, we want her to be a part of the group. Is that correct, or do you remember things in a different way?
No, that's kind of correct, to be honest. So obviously, like, I knew them both pretty well. I knew Mark better because he was a trainer at Dragon Pro. And Flash Morgan Webster had moved away into England by then, like a traitor. So we all got along really well, and obviously I'd seen them at Pro Wrestling Chaos and Attack Pro Wrestling and all that sort of stuff, even before I was in WWE. We'd all trained together. And I think we were both just kind of at lulls in WWE. So I'd kind of come in and I'd wrestled like Kaylee Ray for the belt. And then I'd just kind of like fallen into that like mid-card area. They just won. They'd had their big moment in Cardiff where they won the belts. And then they lost them in Blackpool. And then I think they were kind of on the same sort of vein where nobody was doing bad, but we needed something. We needed that fire under us to light something. And a lot of NXT UK was kind of just putting your own ideas out there and seeing if people liked them. So we just kind of, I think they decided, obviously they were South Wales Subculture for a bit, I think unofficially, but they were South Wales Subculture. And they just kind of asked if I'd be up for doing like a stable. Like, we think we'd all look cool together. We all hung out whenever we were at work. Like, and I think the best sort of work relationships, for lack of a better term, become the best TV because it's genuine, you know? So we were just like, should we give it a go? Like, I guess I look cool as the centerpiece. I'm a bright human. So it kind of attracts it a little bit. It stops them just being these two guys. It's these two guys and this cool looking girl, I guess. And then they all look cool. So we just kind of ran with it. And I'm really grateful that WWE were just kind of like, yeah, okay. There was a period of time too where they were like, we don't really get it, but we're going to let you do it. And I really appreciate that they just kind of let us kind of run with it. And it was a good time. It was weird figuring something like that out on television. You know, you'd like to think you'd get a few practice runs on the equivalent of a house show, but we didn't have those sort of things. So we just had to be like, okay, it's as TV ready as it's going to get. So we're just going to do it.
Fair dues.
It's great. I'm so grateful for that. And I'm so happy that we still get to do it now.
Right. Subculture's really been kicking arse all over the world as well. But obviously, as well, I know you suffered an injury, I think around that time as well, about your ACL, if I'm correct, yes? Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
I mean,
I tore my ACL. Sorry, carry on.
No, so I was going to say that's a hell of an injury to have. I want to know, with an ACL tear, you know, obviously being a fan, I want to know the kind of rehab and mentality that goes into coming back from an injury like that.
Yeah, so I tore my ACL, I think, it was like the second show that we'd had fans back. So I think it was around November 2021. And I just tore it in training, doing like the most mundane training exercise ever. It was nothing exciting. And it took a little while to like figure out what it was. Because it didn't happen at WWE, I had to like do a lot of the kind of like medical side of the stuff myself. But they were really good at like trying to get me in places quick and stuff. But yeah, I got my surgery in like a month, which is really good because I got it on the NHS and that's kind of unheard of. But I just happened to know a couple people, so it's it worked out quite well for me. But yeah, it was a pretty big surgery. You like can't feel your leg for like 2 weeks, which is crazy just because of the amount of stuff they put into it to make sure you don't feel the surgery. And they basically just put this giant, I think with mine, they just put this giant metal wedge where my ACL would have been. And then just put all my other ligaments on top. And it was pretty wild. I don't really remember that much of it because I was on loads and loads of painkillers. But it's crazy how long it takes to even feel normal again. So I had this weird thing where I'm really mobile, right? So my knees are like hypermobile, so they go too far one way, which is pretty normal. But when I had my surgery, my surgeon was like, I'm going to make sure your knee doesn't do that anymore. So it's just going to go to straight. And he said it would, you know, lessen my likelihood of injuring it again, which is great, but he only did it to one leg. So I had one leg that would go super, super bendy straight and one leg that would just go kind of straight. So I had no gauge of like what my leg should feel like. because the other one feels super bendy, but the other one's actually never going to get there. So I had to figure out this like new normal for what my right leg can do versus what my left leg can do, which was like a crazy adjustment. But I had a super good physio here in Cardiff who like wasn't a wrestling guy at all. He was like a rugby sports physio, but he like did so much research into wrestling just so he could figure out like the kind of movement patterns I need to do and like how we can build those up in an exercise standpoint before I even get anywhere near wrestling again. And yeah, it was crazy. It was lots of just learning to walk and then learning to squat and then learning to jump. And it's still kind of, it feels fantastic now. It feels better than my other leg, just because we've kind of pushed it so hard. But it's still crazy to me. It's never lost on me how grateful I am to be able to still push it so hard and not worry about it anymore. Like there's a horrible like 6-month buffer where you can do things, but it's just really scary and you don't want to push yourself to failure in case your knee gives out before like your muscles do, you know? So it's a very strange adjustment period. But it feels great now. I still have my cool knee brace that I don't really need, but I quite like how it looks now. So I'm just kind of stuck with it. But yeah, it was a big chunk, but I think it's really important. Not that I would ever wish an injury upon anyone, but I do think it really kind of drags you back down to earth and makes you very grateful for what you can do when those things are taken away from you. And like makes you very smart in a wrestling sense because I got injured doing a shoulder tackle. So like I could never, there's no point being scared of that stuff because I'm going to have to do it again. It was one of the first things I did when I went back to training because you can't live like that. You can't live scared that it's going to happen again because it might or it might not. So you've got to just give it 100% either way.
Exactly. If you have that fear and tension of something bad's going to happen, you're going to limit yourself on what you want to do. You might not take a booking that might lead to you becoming a champion. You might not take an opportunity where you get to learn a new skill. And I think that's a very great attitude to have towards it. Yes, it's the fear of the unknown, but you can emerge from that unknown a better person and with new skills. Now, Dani, obviously, I want to talk as well with NXT UK shutting down as well. I remember when I heard the news because I feel like it was just shy of Clash of the Castle coming up as well.
It was like the week before, I think.
God, I mean, just a domino effect of upsetting news for the UK scene. So I want to know, Dani, if you look back on NXT UK from your personal point of view, and the fun you had there, and meeting new people, and that experience with the WWE, what is something that you would look back on and think that is something I will always cherish within NXT UK?
I think I will never move past the fact that I worked for people like Shawn Michaels and people like Triple H. I think no matter how big and famous someone gets, that's still so cool. And even if you are working for them as producer Shawn Michaels or CEO Triple H, like they are still those people, and I think that's so cool. And even just like the wrestlers you get to meet along the way, it's just so sick. And it also meant I made so many relationships that have been really helpful now that I'm not in WWE because so many people come and go. I remember I was on a show with Nigel McGuinness a few months ago, and we were both just like, oh, look at us. And it helps because I was a friendly face to him. And it's great having those moments where you're like, oh, I actually did meet so many important people that I now, as an independent wrestler, can take elsewhere. And yeah, it just doesn't get old wrestling for like the actual famous wrestlers because we can pretend famous wrestler all we want, but none of us are Shawn Michaels,
Yeah, very true. None of us are the old heartbreak kid or heartbreak man, in this day and age. The man's definitely got it all. But something I'm very interested about as well, when you entered NXT UK and then when it all came down and closed and then re-entering the UK independent scene, do you feel like it had changed quite a lot from when you first went into NXT UK and then when you emerged from it?
I don't know if it had changed, but there was so many people on the indies that I had never wrestled. I feel like I'd met a lot of them, but I just never wrestled them. And it kind of shook me how little people I'd wrestled at all before I went to WWE. because I was kind of in that Southwest scene, I guess I wrestled a lot of the same people all the time. But then coming out of WWE, I guess I was a bit of a bigger deal. So I was wrestling a lot more around the country. And just these, not only people I hadn't wrestled, but people that had gotten so much better in the time that I was away. And it made me feel weird because obviously, yeah, I'd been to WWE, but if you include COVID, I had maybe like 8 matches in those 3 years. And you've got people here on the indies who have been wrestling pretty much since as soon as we could in like halfway through 2020 to now, and they've got hundreds of matches on me. So it was a strange adjustment, feeling like I'm getting brought in as this big deal, but I don't actually know if I can live up to that because I haven't actually got the experience that people may think I do just because I worked somewhere famous, you know? So it took a few months of kind of adjusting and just kind of getting some reps under my belt and being like, okay, no, I can wrestle. It's a different type of wrestling as well. You know, TV wrestling is very different to the wrestling you do on the indies. And it took me a little while to figure that back out again because I was learning so many ways to wrestle for TV and now I don't have to. So that was strange. But I think the indie scene was way like more welcoming than I thought it would be. I think I was a little scared for a while that there was this kind of ridge between the WWE people that are now looking for jobs again. And I kind of lucked out because I didn't come back from my injury for like a few months until after we got released. So I kind of missed the initial wave of all the WWE people coming back. So I didn't end up getting lost in it. But no, everyone was amazing. Like everyone just wanted to wrestle me, which was the best feeling ever. And I got to wrestle so many people that I'd wanted to wrestle for so long. And I just kind of, after a few months, I just slipped straight back in and I felt like nothing had ever changed. And it was immediately my favorite thing to do again, you know.
Hey, the joyous, fun occasions keep on coming, and I truly love to see it. Now, I must talk about as well, because you went to a little certain company down the line, formerly Impact Wrestling, now TNA Wrestling again. Good times are coming across. And obviously, what was the decision when you sat down with like Mark and Flash and the discussion of Impact came up and it was like, all right, let's go there? Because when I spoke to Flash, he actually considered retirement as well last year. So it's kind of crazy that all that opportunity then came up for you guys. So how did Impact come about for you guys?
Yeah, I guess it's one of those things, isn't it? Like, it's such a different story from me and Flash to Mark. Like, I think 3 of us all have very different thinking patterns for it. Obviously, Flash was thinking about retiring. He just opened his school, so I think he was quite content in just doing that. Mark had just had a baby, so like he was in a very big adjustment period of his life as well. I'd only just been back from injury a few months, so it was just one of those things where we kind of had that conversation of we don't want to get lost in the shuffle. You know, there's so many people that have just come out of WWE. There's such a big indie scene right now. How can we use our time in WWE to benefit us and kind of put the ball back in our court a little bit? And then, you know, obviously Mark had links to Impact before from when he did boot camp. So we just kind of opened the conversation, and obviously they run a lot in Canada and we could work in Canada without a visa. So we just kind of came to an agreement then. We were like, that we'll give it a go. Maybe it won't work. Maybe it isn't, you know, maybe the stable doesn't come across to North Americans very well. Maybe they won't get it. Maybe they won't like us. And I think the thing we all knew we could do is that we could wrestle, and we could wrestle well. And TNA is such a company for just people that love wrestling and people that want to see good wrestling. At like its base roots, it's always been the work rate guys, you know, like your Alex Shelley's, your Chris Sabins, your AJ Styles. Like they're the guys that we all watch their wrestling and go, oh yeah, we're gonna steal that move, you know. So we knew we could do that. So it was just a case of getting there and showing people that and hoping that they got it too. And they did, and it went way better than any of us thought it was going to. At one point we thought there was some sort of prank going on when they won the belts. We were like, nah, surely they're messing with us now. But you know, it just kept getting better, and now it's TNA, and now I'm a Knockout, and these things just keep happening, and I don't really know how to keep up with them most of the time.
Yeah, who knows? You're going to get maybe the key to the city next. And she's like, yeah, just take all the accolades. Take
Yeah,
all the
okay,
accolades.
fine. If you guys insist, I'll do it.
Yeah, I think you deserve it. You never know. But also within Impact as well, one match I definitely want to talk about. You against the Coven with Trinity, who's back in WWE now. And I want to know, partying with Trinity. I love her theme in WWE. I love all the Feel the Glow thing, the light up shoes, everything. Truly a banger indeed. But partying with Trinity as well, I want to know, what did you learn from that? And the reaction when you got to know, oh, I'm partying with Trinity against the Coven. That would have been like a, oh shit moment for you, right?
It was so weird. Like, so obviously I wasn't signed with Impact at the time. So we were only coming over as and when we could when they were in Canada. And I felt like I just kept getting thrown these really big opportunities. And I kept wanting to be like, guys, what's going on? Like, I'm still just on the indies back home. Like, I don't know why I'm being treated like this. But yeah, so they partnered me up with Trinity, and I don't know what the thought process was behind it. Maybe we're both just green. I don't know, but I'll take it. And it was so much fun. She's the best. She's the nicest woman ever. And it's really interesting getting to kind of pick her brain as someone who wrestles majority on the indies, versus someone who has wrestled their entire career on TV. It's a very interesting adjustment, and I learned so much from her as a TV wrestler. About like when to do certain things so that cameras can get it, and how much is too much, because if you have a sick indie match on TV, it's probably going to be too much because people just can't catch all of it at the same time. So there's a lot of learning there. And she was just fantastic for that sort of stuff and putting stuff together. And just super calm and super up for anything. Like, really wanted me to look really good in the match, which was really nice because obviously she doesn't have to do that. And she's the champion. Like, it's no big deal if I'm just there as the fourth person. But she really wanted me to get stuff in, and would always, if I told her an idea, she'd say it so it would get used because it was coming from her. And yeah, she's just the best. She was the nicest woman to team with ever. And it's great to have that photo and be like, look at what she's doing now. And I've wrestled those people. It's the same with Jordan in the Rumble. I was like, I wrestled her like a few months ago. What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to get into that real quickly, but one thing I want to talk about as well, images in wrestling. I think images are very important. You look at, especially the UK, Will Ospreay at AEW All In, Adrian Street, the famous image in the coal mines. But one image I want to talk about as well is you guys with Subculture. You sitting on a chair, flashing mark behind you, and you're with their tag belts and everything. And that I feel like that image is striking. Just move about it. Like you guys were a part of NXT UK and things didn't go the way that could have been the best. And now you're in Impact. Then with the tag titles for Flash and Mark, with the Red Pro tag team titles, I mean, also a great 8x10 that you could sell at merch desks as well, because that's just a banger image in itself.
Oh,
but when you saw, good, definitely getting that photo 1K, absolutely love to see it. But when you saw that image and to think how you've evolved from then to now, was that like a group moment of like, fellas, we've made it.
Yeah, it was strange because we always knew that Subculture was a good idea, and we always knew that we completely believed in it, so it was going to work somehow. And then when it didn't work out in WWE, as much as it was kind of like, oh, that's a shame, it never deterred us because we knew it was good and we knew the content was good and we knew there was something there. We just needed the right people to see it and the right people to push it. So then when Impact seen it and they loved it, it just kind of felt like, oh, this is what we wanted the whole time. We just wanted someone to believe in us and let us do. And it sounds cheeky to be like, let us do what we want, but because we believed in it so much, we knew we just needed the reins to make it happen, and then we could handle the rest. So it felt great to get to that point where people just were like, "Yep, it's all yours. Like we trust you. Do what you want with it." So then getting to put it on that kind of worldwide scale, and then the boys obviously being two of the best wrestlers in the world, that those titles just come in because we look cool. People have seen us on TV and look how good they are. Like, you can't not put the tag belts on them at that point, I don't think. And I think it's such a testament to how much we just believed in this idea and believed in each other. Like, they're my two biggest supporters, 100%. They were always pushing me to do better things. So I think it's a really nice reward for how much we put into it without reward for so long.
Hey, hell of an image, as I've said before, and definitely, folks, it would make a great birthday present, Easter present, even a Valentine's Day.
Right,
But definitely get that image. I mean, think about it. Your father could have it on the desk, propped up at work, and just seeing Subculture there will bright up anybody's day. So yeah, definitely buy that image if you can. But obviously, you mentioned Jordan Grace as well. I know you would wrestle her at Impact Turning Point in Newcastle, but just before that as well, obviously Impact would do the gut checks, 2 in the UK as well as the UK tour. As a UK based wrestler, to know that Impact were like, hey, yes, the big companies are just doing one-off shows, but we're going to come not only look for talent but do a whole UK based tour. Did you feel like you guys maybe had a part in that? We're like, yeah, we're showing off the UK. It's us. Come on over.
I think we did, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think like it's a great feeling. Even if we didn't, I like to think they were at least like, oh, well, these people are good, so there must be good people in England. And we were always talking about how good our friends were. If we got a word into it, we'd be like, oh, you should get like this guy wrestle here too, because we just obviously want everyone to do well. And I think there's so much good wrestling here in Britain, especially here in Wales, and it would be a shame for any of it to go unnoticed. And I think because there is no big TV deals here in the UK, so much of it is a secret. Um, so even just the gut check is such a chance for people to go ahead. There were people at the gut check that have been wrestling for years and years. It was not a like newbie trainee tryout. There was absolute veterans of the business there because they understand that that's the chance to get on this bigger scale because we just don't have that here in the UK. And obviously it led to Harley Hudson getting a job, which is great. I think she's fantastic, and I think she's a great example of someone who completely gets every aspect of wrestling. She had an incredible look, and she gave them exactly what they asked for on the day, and it paid off. And I'm really happy for her, and I really hope we get to work together down the line. It would be really fun to have wrestled her here and wrestled her out in Canada or something. And yeah, I think it's really beneficial. I hope it's not the only one. I hope they come and do UK tours all the time. It was really fun for me to get to wrestle on a UK tour for Impact, and I'd love to have even more and more of my friends with me each time we do it.
No, hey, absolutely. So I know someone else who got a contract not because of the gut check, but just because of their amazing performance was Leon Slater, who I know you've also wrestled as well. And I've seen Leon wrestle in person as well. And I mean, holy shit, grin across the face. I wasn't even drinking at that point. I think my whiskey went warm just because I was so focused on watching him perform. I mean, do you think Leon Slater in TNA could easily become X Division champion by the end of the year with just how amazing he is?
I'm surprised he's not already. Like, brother is he's gonna be probably the best wrestler in the world. Like, probably, if we actually look at it. He's so young. He's been doing it a long time, but he just hasn't had that platform for so long, And like I said, as soon as he got it, he just ran with it, and he immediately became the guy to talk about. And he did it so much. He went to GCW. He went and did it over there. So just everyone knew who Leon Slater was, and TNA didn't have a choice but to give him a job. They had to, to be the first guy to tie down Leon Slater is a big achievement, I think. So I'm really excited to see what he does. I'm excited that I get to be there while it happens. It's always nice to have like a friendly British face there too. So I'm really excited to see what he does, and he should absolutely wrestle Chris Sabin for the X Division Championship, and I would like to see it a lot.
Well, looks like we've already got a match booked for Slammiversary, so I'm happy with that. Definitely. Well, I'll be tuning in for that 100%. If that doesn't need to happen. But obviously, Jordan Grace wrestling her. Jordan Grace is somebody that I watch wrestling and I just think, holy shit, that is a powerhouse. Somebody that you're definitely going to keep your eyes fixated on and think she is the top dog of the company. And obviously wrestling her at Turning Point in the UK crowd, what was that like? Do you feel like you maybe had the UK backing with the crowd and then getting into it? What was it, just the whole experience of Turning Point and wrestling Jordan on that show?
I weirdly don't think I did have the crowd on my side. She's just, she's a superstar, and as much as, I feel like the UK appreciates me, they see me a lot, so they got to see the superstar, and that's exciting for them. So good for them. But it was such an incredible experience. I'd only wrestled in Newcastle like once, so like it was fun for me as well just to do that show. But for there to be an actual pay-per-view, where I'm from, in England is so exciting, and it felt extra special. And she was she was great to wrestle. We wrestled once for Progress in like 2019, but I was super new. Obviously, it was a few years. I think it was right before she went to Impact. So like I felt like we were two completely different wrestlers in this match we had, and it's a match I think is very important for the trajectory of my career. I think it did a lot for me. I still wasn't signed at the point I had that match. And I think she really helped level me up, and again just wanted me to look good and do well, and I can't thank her enough for that. And it's so cool getting to see her be in the Royal Rumble and be the TNA Knockouts champion. Like, she's doing it all, and it's great, and I couldn't be more happy for her. She deserves it so much.
Absolutely, indeed. And you know what? Since you mentioned, let's talk about the Rumble. Recently just happened. You know, Trinity going back as Naomi and Jordan Grace coming out as a surprise appearance. You know, as you know, a TNA wrestler, to get to see the company now showcased on the grandest stage with the biggest company, that's got to be exciting, right? I mean, did you guys know anything about this, or were you just watching it at 1 a.m. and thinking, "Oh, fuck, that's our guys"?
Yeah, I didn't have a clue. I don't think any of us did. It was, I think, a very well kept secret. But yeah, I couldn't believe it. So cool to see like how close everything actually is. Especially as someone who doesn't live in America, like it's hard for me to gauge, you know, what business relationships are, what personal relationships are, because I'm just not there physically. So it's crazy to see that and just realize how level we actually are. And it's not like a WWE and TNA is all the way down here. Like there's actually a genuine like competition and now relationship there, and I think that's so cool. And I hope it's not the last we see of it, but even if it is, I think that's such a sick thing to do. And so cool that they got to do it in the Women's Rumble and the girls got to do it, and I'm just really happy for everyone. And I think it would be sick if that was, I don't know how you build from there, but if that's a thing that could be built on, that'd be insane.
Well, I mean, a way I could see it maybe is, you know, another TNA WWE crossover. Have you face Rhea Ripley, you know, two former NXT UK individuals? I mean,
that would be fun. We wrestled once and it lasted about 30 seconds, so I'd like to do it again.
Well, hey, I think that would be exceptional to see, and maybe Flash and Mark could beat up Dominic and just make sure he's kept in the corner, you know, keep him to the side, as they say. But I want to know maybe your thoughts, you know, if there's another opportunity, maybe Money in the Bank or Elimination Chamber, just to get maybe more TNA individuals focused on, including yourself. Who else from TNA would you love to be showcased on a WWE platform?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think there's a lot of guys who are in WWE and then went to TNA who have become incredible wrestlers since going to TNA that I would love to see go back and be kind of given their flowers. Steve Macklin's ones that come to mind. I think he's incredible, and he had a great run with the belt in Impact. And I think if he could go back to WWE, the kind of wrestler he is now, it'd be a completely different story. I would love to see my good friend Jodie Threat there. I think she would handle it so well. She's so exciting, and I think the most like crazy TVable wrestler ever. I think she's the best. We've just started tagging together at TNA, so that's really fun. It'd be fun if we could do some tag stuff together. But yeah, also the Motor City Machine Guns. That would be the dream match. We've got to get them there somehow, just for the crossover. God. Then they can come back to us at TNA. But for the crossover, it'd be sick.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Motor City Machine Guns versus Usos. Holy shit, that would God, that would be absolutely mental. But you know what we should probably talk about as well, you getting signed with TNA as well. Because obviously they were Impact, then there was a switchover. And I swear when they first became TNA, like you were one of the first lots they announced on social media, like you had signed. So how did that opportunity come to sign with TNA and the thoughts of the company rebranding from Impact to TNA? Just want to know your thoughts on that.
So as far as I'm aware, very few people knew about the rebrand until the video package came out, which is very cool. I certainly didn't know. It was around the time of the UK tour, I think, that they announced it. So that was really cool because we were all there, and there was loads of TNA chants throughout the whole UK tour because everyone was just up for it. But yeah, it was strange because obviously I'd worked for them quite a bit. I kind of was hoping that was the direction it was going in, like that they wanted to sign me. That was the vibe I was getting. I always felt like I was doing a good job. So I had no reason to like think otherwise. And then it just came up when it did. They asked me, and obviously I said yes. It was very kind of like, it's weird. You always assume when you're going to get offered a contract that, you know, someone sits you down at a desk and kind of slides it over to you and you start crying. But in reality, like, you wrestle for them quite a few times and then you get an email. But either way, it's fantastic. And I'm so glad to like officially be a part of that team. I felt like I was anyway, just because I've been there quite a lot. But it's nice to kind of put a name to it and, you know, sign off on it. And it's great to have an actual place to kind of showcase myself throughout the world and not just in the UK.
No, of course as well. I mean, you're on the website, you're part of the roster page, you got the whole picture and everything. But as well, you know, with TNA Hard to Kill, the first TNA properly branded pay-per-view in so long, you be a part of the real opening up of the main card with the Ultimate X knockouts. I mean, I've seen that match type and I think, holy shit, that looks like something that's gonna maybe hurt in the morning. So being a part of that, you know, with so many other great women and opening up that main card, I got to know the thoughts on that, Danny.
Terrifying for the most part. Very high. It was awesome. When they asked me if I wanted to be in it, I was like, obviously yes. I'm not even going to think about how scary it is. Obviously, just yes. But it was crazy. I'm so glad we got to be the first match on that pay-per-view as well. Such a cool way to open it up and it be the first TNA pay-per-view. But yeah, my God, it was scary. I almost wish, so I didn't fall off till the very end. And I almost wish I'd have fallen off at the beginning. So at least I knew what it felt like and I could be less scared. Because the fear of falling off is so much worse than actually just falling off. But it was crazy. It was really high. It's really hard to hold on to as well. Because it's not even like a pull-up bar where it's like this. It's like a rope. So you have to go like one hand at a time. It's crazy. And like, I watched back so many Ultimate X matches in preparation for that match, and I could not believe some of the stuff they do. Like, even from the first one with like Sabin and Styles in it is insane. And they just kept building on it. And there's so many things you can do with that match, because not only is there 6 people in it, there's a truss to climb, there's ropes, there's a big X hanging down. Like, there's so many things you can do with it, like almost too many ideas to even fit in one match. But I definitely like to do another one. Now that I have fallen off and survived, I would do another one.
Well, hey, bring the next one around as well, because that match, A Hard to Kill, was amazing. And A Hard to Kill, well, in general, was just an amazing show. You know, so many great things happened. Moose becoming TNA champion, Jordan Grace becoming the women's champion, Ash by Elegance debuting, and Nick Nemeth as well. I mean, TNA is just on fire with how much they've done as well. So I want to know, Danny, what's some things you would love to see TNA achieve in the rest of 2024?
Yeah, I mean, they started off pretty strong, haven't they? Yeah, Hard to Kill was insane with Nick Nemeth coming as well. I think it's really broadened the horizons of people that would watch TNA as well. Even just the switch back to TNA, I think, did that so much. But bringing in these people, I think has helped that so much too. And I think, I don't know, I guess goals are an even bigger TV deal, even bigger names. Like, I think the matches you can make already with the roster in TNA are some dream matches that they are just waiting to pull the trigger on. Obviously bringing Ospreay in for a few is huge too. So yeah, I'm really excited to see where it goes. Hopefully I'm involved in lots of capacities. But I think only big things this year for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, I truly cannot wait to see what comes out of TNA, not only from yourself, but so many of the other great wrestlers in there as well. But I want to come back to the old humble abode of the United Kingdom, because I know you've done some great things here as well. And one show I want to talk about, who I feel like is a company that's not really been given its flowers, and I feel like a lot of people need to check this out, is Riot Cabaret. When I went down there for All In Weekend, I just was so amazed at the atmosphere, the crowd, the venue as well was stunning indeed. And I know you faced Nina Samuels at All Singing, All Dancing. So I want to know with Riot Cabaret and that environment and atmosphere, you know, would you feel like maybe it's a company that's going to hit a stride in 2024?
I hope so, for sure. They have a very like unique feel about them, I think, because a lot of the people that go to Riot Cabaret shows, I don't think they're wrestling fans. I think because it's so central London, I think it's just a lot of adults that are going to something after work and having a beer, which is such an interesting like group of people to perform to because they're so up for it. And there's a lot of wrestling they haven't seen, so they're just so excitable by it. And like you said, in a room like the Clapham Grand, which is so like up, so there's people all around you, it feels so intimate and so loud. And I think they could be onto something great. Like even the quality of the matches they put out is so high for such a new company as well. um, and being, like you said, so accessible in a venue like that. Um, I hope they do fantastic, and I'd love to wrestle there again. I've wrestled there twice, I think, and it's been so much fun every single time. And yeah, I think they'll do big things for sure. They already are doing big things, so only better, hopefully.
Truly, I mean, I can't wait to see it, and I hope they've got another show during All In Weekend this year, because last year's All In Weekend was just an exceptional experience as well. And as a UK fan, I always am just excited to have wrestling on at a reasonable time, so I can actually have a sleep schedule.
Yeah, right.
But as a UK based wrestler, to see like a big company like AEW come over, take over Wembley, and just build a whole weekend around it. If this continues every year, do you think All In Weekend could basically be like the UK equivalent of a Mania weekend?
That would be so cool if that was the case. Yeah, we didn't get to do any of it last weekend, really. Last year, sorry, because we did Riot Cabaret and then Copper Box for Rev Pro, and then we flew that night to Canada to do Impact. So we completely missed any of the All In funsies. So it would be nice to be around for it this year at least. Obviously, like there's so much talent here, and I think AEW are probably starting to realize that. And even just like so many of the guys that we've seen in like little extra roles on All In too was so good for the company. They've obviously met very important people now, and I think that's really good for everyone here. And it's good that they know there is talent here to come back to. So yeah, I hope it could be a spot for a lot of my friends to do really cool things. Because the more spots, the better. And it's good that someone's starting to tap into how much talent is really here.
Of course, absolutely. And I truly do love what our scene is. And I feel like it has a lot of individuals who are just so close to maybe getting onto that grander stage. Now, when I had Mark and Flash on, I mentioned that I feel like All In should do a British Invitational Battle Royale, just showcasing our UK scene. And they mentioned some names, Wild Boar, Leon Slater, Michael Oku. So I want to know, Dani, if you could build a women's British Invitational Battle Royale happening at AEW All In Wembley, what some women would you love to see on that kind of card?
Okay. So we'll definitely put in the two I said earlier. Emerson Jane's going in.
Okay.
Lizzie Evo's going in. I think you need Rio in there. She's got all the belts, so she needs to be in there. Nina Samuels needs to be in there. She's also got all of the belts. Let me think. Who else am I missing? Rain Leverkusen needs to be in there. I think she's my favorite wrestler. She's injured at the moment, but I'm sure she'll get better by then. If I tell her she's in the Battle Royal, she'll be there. I think those are my favorite wrestlers for sure. There's so many like incredibly talented women. Even people like Alexis Falcon, I think is great. I think she's like really found her stride at the moment, and I really enjoy wrestling her. It's so refreshing that I think there's so many like sick women's wrestlers. I think there was a period of time where there was a lot of like good women's wrestlers, but now everyone's just super up for it and everyone's actually getting really sick. And that's why we can do like women's main events at Rev Pro. Like that was never a thing up until a few years ago because like it just wasn't, we just weren't there yet. On like a work rate level, on a performance level, like, and as a woman, I am more than happy to admit that we had to kind of step up. So now seeing that so many women have done that, it would be great to see a bunch of them on that bigger stage and get that opportunity.
No, hey, I would love to see it as well. And I know if you were in that Battle Royale, I hopefully would not see Alex Windsor in there because I feel like she would be gunning for you 100%.
Yeah, no, please don't.
yeah, knowing you took her belts. And obviously Alex has been a previous guest of the show, so I want to know that moment of, you know, dethroning Windsor, her over 700-day reign as Rev Pro Undisputed Women's Champion, and that crowning moment for you, winning those belts. Does that, and for obviously being so young as well, do you feel like it's a out of body experience and it was like, holy shit, like I'm gunning as ever, I'm part of TNA Knockout, and now I have Rev Pro's highest women's championship in my hands?
Yeah, it was a really nice moment. It was great because it was kind of the perfect underdog story for me. So like we were already wrestled for it, and she cheated and I lost, and then we did a whole rebuild to Crystal Palace. And the fact that that was the show where I actually got to win it, it was really nice. My parents came because they're from that area, so they traveled down to watch it, and like it was just a very like pure like, oh, I've done something important here moment. And it felt great. I felt like when I came to Rev Pro only like a year prior, I was straight out of WWE, hadn't quite found my feet yet. I was a heel for the most part. Like there's a real slow build to me becoming this person that they wanted to win the belt, not only able to do it, but people actually wanting me to. Meant so much more when I actually win it and people are actually happy for me. Because it's not just a self-gratifying thing then, you know, people actually wanted to see it. But yeah, that was a crazy moment. It was definitely the most like poetic justice moment I think of my career so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, Danny Two Belts is definitely a good title to have. Get that on a shirt. Get that would sell out, I think, quite a lot. So that'd be a stunning one to see. But obviously, as well, you would win Pro Wrestling Chaos's Wrestler of the Year last year. So another achievement on your list. And to win that award, beating out so many great others, does it really show that you're evolving and continuing to grow?
Yeah, absolutely. That one really shocked me actually. I seen it and then I messaged Flashball Webster and I asked him if it was real. I was like, "Or did you do this because I'm your friend?" And he was like, "No, it's real votes, I swear." Um, so that's good to know. But yeah, that was really nice. I had a really good year at Pro Wrestling Chaos. Obviously, I won the All Wales Championship from Brendan White, which I think was the first like big moment for me post coming back from injury that I felt really kind of changed who I am as a wrestler, and I owe a lot to Brendan for that too. So it was really nice to see that recognized because I think Pro Wrestling Chaos has had so many incredible wrestlers this year. You know, like between Brendan White, Harrison Bennett, Danny Jones was the champion for a long time. Charlie Sterling's a regular there. Like those are the sort of people I'm beating, and that's crazy for me as someone who just loves pro wrestling and loves watching pro wrestling and loves watching those people. To be considered the wrestler of the year is a very honourable thing for me. But yeah, it just gives me even more reason to keep pushing it and keep being the best version that I can.
Of course, absolutely as well. And you're truly are killing it, Danny, honestly. And I want to know a thought on a take as well, because I know Mark and Flash, they're the Red Pro Tag Team Champions, but Mark is injured, and you stepped in to help defend those belts. And I've always wondered, you know, I feel like maybe the future of wrestling can maybe break down some barriers and it, you know, become more intergender. And I know you've had some intergender matches, but with tag team wrestling, obviously with you and Flash defending those titles, do you feel like maybe tag team wrestling could be a barrier of, you know, breaking down and becoming more intergender with more intergender teams?
I think so, and I think it's starting to happen naturally. Obviously, me and Flash had done that. We'd done a couple different ideations of subculture. So, like me and Mark, or Mark and Flash, or me and Flash. So, like we've done it a little bit, and it is starting to become more of a thing. I know, like Lana Austin teams with Rob Drake quite a little bit. You have Alexis Falcon, Charles Crowley, they team together now. So like it is becoming a thing. It looks like it's the last kind of bit of intergender wrestling to kind of catch up. I guess just because there's not a lot of those pairings anyway. So it will take a while to catch up, I think. But I think it's really cool, and I think there's so many opportunities to do something with it. Like it was really fun getting to, you know, be the champion for be the Rev Pro Tag Team Champion. And Andy Quilden will tell you I wasn't, but I definitely am. So that was really fun. I hope we get to do that a bit more until Mark's better, and then I'll maybe give him the belt back. But yeah, I think it's really cool. I think there's a lot that can be done with it. I'd like to be a part of it if it is so. There's many Subculture six-mans probably due to happen. So yeah, I'd like to see a lot more of it for sure.
Well, absolutely. And you mentioned, the six-man Subculture. I would personally love to see you guys versus the Acclaimed. I think that would be absolutely enjoyable. I mean, is there maybe if we could see that in Wembley, all into Subculture versus the Acclaimed for the Trios Championships?
Hey, I'll do it. It's not me you got convinced.
I'll definitely make sure to give Tony Khan a few
Thank
DMs
you.
and eventually get blocked and have to send a mail or something. I'll get my stats out of the closet there. I'm sure they're somewhere in the back. But also, you and Jody have teamed in TNA as well. So I want to make another point of having an intergender tag team match. If you and Jody could face any male or female tag team in TNA, who's it you want to have another match with?
Motor City Machine Guns, without a doubt. They're the best tag team of all time. There's no argument there. They're also I think Jodie's trained with Alex Shelley quite a lot, so I think she'd really just like to do it. And I think they're such a tag team that all tag teams watch. Starting to tag myself I've been watching a lot of tag team wrestling, and I just think they are the perfect example of that constant regeneration of the wheel and always trying new things and always finding a new way to do their stuff, and it's always exciting. And I think the best thing about tag wrestling is being able to make it so exciting when the rules are so strict. If you can play within those and still make it incredible, I think that's a real talent, and I think they are the best example of that. So they'd be the people I'd wrestle first for sure.
Wow, hey, that would be a match I would love to see indeed. And many great things I'm sure are going to come from not only just TNA, but yourself as well, Dani. And thank you for tuning in, folks, for being here for the end of season 3 of the Soul Sessions. Main event, absolutely, 100%. Main event, Dani Luna. That is it right now. I'm calling it right now. That will be there in the future. But Dani, final question for this episode of the Soul Sessions, 2024. By the end of it, what's something you would love Subculture to achieve, all three of you, in 2024?
I think short term, I would like a Subculture six-man where we've all got the Rev Pro belts. So once Mark is back, and obviously I have my 2 belts, I'd like us the triple crowns of Subculture in a big six-man. Would be really fun. Don't care who it's against. We'll win. It won't matter. Long term, I'd really love for them to come over to TNA with me. I think we could do some incredible stuff there, especially with me and Jody as a team now. I would absolutely pull Jody into Subculture. She fits the bill perfectly. And then we could be a sick 4 group, a proper gang. That would be great. But yeah, I think just more Subculture around the world is the goal. We've done the UK, we've kind of cracked Canada and North America. I think I'm interested to see where else we can take it. And I think sky's the limit, to be honest.
Well, folks, I think that pretty much sums it up. This will be the summer of Subculture for sure. Well, that is it. Well, folks, Dani, thank you everyone for tuning in here for the entirety of season 3 of the Soul Sessions. And of course, if you've loved what you've heard of Dani and you want to see our journey within TNA, I will be including a link to Dani Luna's Instagram in the description of this video. Click it, give her a follow. As well, I will also be including a link to Subculture's Instagram. Click that, follow the group, get some Subculture merch. It will look great for the holidays and every other day of the week. So definitely there. Well, folks, I would say the whole YouTuber stick, but it's 2024 now. I ain't got it. You know what the whole thing is. YouTube's been around since 2005. I have my faith. Thank you, viewers. Thank you for tuning in for season 3 of the Soul Sessions.